Hey everyone, welcome to our Asset Management Friday segment of the Passive Income Through Multifamily Real Estate podcast. I am your co-host, Kyle Mitchell, also joined by Gary Lipsky. This is a new segment that we recently launched. It's focused on educating operators, building better systems, and becoming a best-in-class operator. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook group, Passive Income Through Multifamily Real Estate. All right, today on the show, we have James Kandasamy. James, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can start by maybe telling the listeners a little bit more about yourself and what you currently do.
So James Kandasamy owning like almost 1,700 units right now. Almost valued at $130 million in asset. I've been doing this for almost 5 to 6 years. Focusing a lot in Central Texas, which is Austin and San Antonio.
Great. Well, welcome, James. Let's talk about refinancing today.
Sure.
When would you refinance and what does that process look like?
So refinancing is very tricky, right? Everything is tricky in this business. There's nothing easy, right? I'm sure now people are seeing all that right now, right? So refinances, basically when I do a deal, especially on a value add deal where I know for sure I'm buying much below the value, right? So I call it built-in upside, right? So on day one, when I do a deal, I see there's a built-in upside. That means I can put my own sweat equity. I can put my capex into the deal and push it to the market price, right? So when I buy a deal, I already know that, right? That I can refinance this deal in 1 or 2 years. So, you have to really plan that out because a lot of people could be refinanced just because market compressed, right? So that's another way of refinance, but that is a bit more, you can't really determine that you're going to refinance, right? So the deal I've refinanced in the past, I've refinanced almost 3 deals right now. And refinance the first 3 deals, we almost return, almost the first 2 deals, we return 117% within 12 months, which is crazy, right? This means we basically had a free building after refinance, right? The third one, we return 80%, if I'm not mistaken. We pulled out 80% from the deal, right? The first 2, we pulled out 170%. So it's a huge refinance within 12 to 15 months, which is why commercial real estate works, right? Otherwise, if you're just looking at cash flow, commercial real estate do work as well. But the power of commercial real estate, especially on a value add deal, especially on a deep value add deal, is on a refinances. But you have to be really doing this only at a certain market market cycle, which is basically a recovery or expansion cycle. You can't do it when the market's going down, right? Because your DSCR gets smaller when you refinance, right? When you refinance, you go from one loan to the other loan, your DSCR becomes smaller, which means, either your rent continue to keep growing, so your DSCR, it becomes higher. If otherwise you're going to be, very, very thin in terms of DSCR, and that's very important for me. So coming back to, how we do refinances, when we buy a deal, we plan for it in the beginning, and when we refinance, we make sure that we don't really take out everything from that deal, even though let's say it's appraised at 100,000 per door. And I know I can take 75% or 70% from it, right? But I will not do that. I usually try to get like 65 or 60% because you still want to have that cushion.
Nice. Yeah, pulling out that much cash, that's huge for your investors. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so is that return of capital for them or return on capital?
Refinance is always return of capital.
Okay.
Right.
Nice.
So it's an industry-wide practice that sales and refinances are always return of capital, right? And we specify that very clearly on our company agreement. And what you should not do is, you cannot do operation cash flow as a return of capital, right?
Yeah, I know we see a lot of people doing that, and a lot of people. I mean, the PPMs obviously it's a lot and intimidating, but people have to read those carefully to figure out, is it return on capital, return of capital when it is cash flow. So important.
Yeah. Cash flow is a diluted term, right? People use cash flow, distribution, cash on cash, but these 3 things are completely different, right? So when the money is returned as a capital, you can't call it cash, cash on cash. That's basically a return of capital, basically like a loan, right? But when you are returning your cash flow, which is a property, money from the property income, right, minus the expenses, you are basically, returning that. If you give it as a cash, if a cash on cash return, that means your cash is always preserved, right? You're returning on top of that, which is the true definition of an investment, right? But if you're returning it as a capital, that is not really an investment. That is just like a loan. It's a quasi loan versus a investment. It makes it a very high risk investment.
Yeah, yeah.
But refinances is always a return of capital because it's a big chunk coming out back to the investors.
Right. So you talked about doing, having this business plan of refinancing in your business plan based on the cycle. When can you get in trouble, with the refinancing? And, obviously cycles play into that as well.
Yeah, I think that there's few ways you can get in trouble, right? So one is cycle, the other one is the deal itself, right? So it's first is the right now, if you cannot be buying at the late stage of expansion cycle and try to refinance. So strategically, I made a decision for past 1.5 years. I refinance everything and I move everything to long-term loan, right? And some deals that I did in the past 2 years is always been straight long-term. Agency loan. I didn't even plan for refinance. I don't even, and I do give scenarios to my investors that if you refinance, this is how much we can get. But I usually tell them this is a 5-year hold. You all want to plan for 5-year hold, right? And we don't really, refinance is a bonus. But it's a bit hard to refinance on an agency loan because that loans are meant for long-term operation investment, and they have a high prepayment penalty, right? So, and yield maintenance or prepayment penalty can change. Like right now, because the interest rate drop, your yield maintenance becomes really high, right? So you can't refinance. So coming back to your question, what market cycle? I mean, you want to do refinances on the recovery side until expansion, maybe mid side of the expansion, and anything beyond that is where you're being very lucky to get out on time, right? If you do it too late, and let's say the market start dropping, the rent start dropping, as I said, you have refinanced a lot of money out and you give everything to your investors. Investors are happy, but you as an operator, you have to be now you are like, if you're giving like 2-3% cash flow, investors just remember 2-3%. I mean, as I told you guys, my initial deals are awesome refinance cash flow, cash out, right? So who can give you 100% in 12 months? Like it's a free building, right? But some of my investors forgot about that money and they keep on asking me, James, why are you giving us 6% return, 7% return? Hey, it's not 6 or 7%, it's infinite return, okay? So every time after the refinance, I try to put in my email that this month, this quarter, we are distributing 7% cash. I usually put infinite return. And in the bracket, I put, 7% based on your initial investment. So people don't forget that, hey, actually, it's infinite return, right? So it's also a communication, right? And answering your question is just make sure that you don't do it too late in the market cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
And you talked about long-term debt. What is long-term debt to you? Is that 10 years, 12 years? And are you always going in with a bridge loan when you have a business plan to refinance or not?
No, I didn't. I've never done a true bridge loan product even when I planned for my refinance. The product that I did was bank loans, conventional bank loans.
Okay.
And remembering correctly, there's two issues with there are issues with the bridge lenders, right? People know about bridge lenders, but a lot more powerful loan product that you can use is conventional bank loan. Credit unions, small banks, local banks, they give a really good bank loan as well. The only problem with their loan is it's all recourse, right? Whereas bridge loans, they have higher fees, but it's a non-recourse, right? And they, there's a lot more out there. They're more well known. But if you're not worried about recourse and the deal is super solid deal, you can go and do a conventional bank loan. There's a lot of credit union, local bank, which gives you really good loan. And if I remember correctly, I was okay with the recourse at that time for my first 3 deals, but I really wanted no prepayment penalty. So I found a bank which didn't give me, they give me 0 prepayment penalty.
Wow, that's great.
Because prepayment penalty will kill your return, right, on a refinance. So when you're going into any deal, you really want to make sure you underwrite, you're going to refinance, take a loan without any prepayment penalty. Recourse is your choice as a risk, right? I mean, at that time, this was 2015, so I was not worried about recourse, non-recourse, right? Starting 2017 is all non-recourse, right? But earlier I was fine, and I know the deal there's so much of upside on it. I didn't mind the recourse side of it.
And so you mentioned the prepayment penalty, but what are the other fees and rates typically look like for a refinance?
Oh, so refinance is same as a normal bank. I mean, so there's two types of refinance, right? One is you do a refinance from completely different banks, right? It's just getting another loan with another bank. You know, there's so the fees are almost the same, right? There's nothing really new in terms of fees. You don't have a broker fee because you're not buying a new deal. Um, yeah, the fees are the same, right? But so the other refinance is what we call within the agency loan. You can do a supplemental, right? So let me explain about supplemental, right? So as I said, the original investment, the 3 deals I did is non-agency. I did a conventional bank loan, and I moved from one bank to another bank. So when I do that, it's just like getting another loan, right? But there's another thing called supplemental, which I've never done. I know that option is available because I do a lot of Fannie Mae loan, which gives a supplemental. So you have one loan, and on top of that, you can, once you have increased your value, and now you can go back to the same lender and tell them, hey, can you give me more money as a supplemental loan at a different rate? So the trick in this is now the lender knows that you got nowhere else to go because you have high prepayment penalty on agency loan, right? So they're going to charge you a lot more basis point higher on the second part of the loan, right? So maybe 70 to 100% more. So if it makes sense, you can still do the supplemental. But the trick is on the second loan, you have a different rate, right? So now you have to use a blended rate calculation for your cash flow because you have an initial amount of the loan that you took, and you have another additional loan amount at a different rate, right? So now you have to use a blended interest rate to calculate your cash flow, right? Is that you guys understanding? I mean, I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
all new information for you guys, right? So
absolutely. And Kyle, maybe I'll pass it along to you. Finish it up.
Yeah, James, we ask every guest this final question. What is your asset management superpower?
Asset management superpower. That's a good question. I mean, I think just knowing the operation very well, building your team and controlling expenses. Where like we are vertically integrated company, so we control our expenses directly because I see the expenses. I can make a one call to anybody in my team, and I can make a decision of hiring or firing them, right? So, and also anything reducing any expenses, you make the call, right? So I use a lot of data analytics in my asset management, look at data, KPIs, and all that to decide on what to do. For example, marketing, right? So I know which is the most effective ad source that I want to use for that particular area. So I don't go and do a random a gunshot of all the Zillow, Palmer.com, Palmerlist. I don't do like 10 different marketing sources. I collect data and I cut off everybody else. I just use one or two. Maximum, most probably is one. So these are the things you can do when you own your own operation, right? So yeah, vertically integrated, controlling our expenses. We have all that power in our hand.
Perfect. Well, thanks, James, for coming on the show and adding value on the subject of refinancing. Today, I learned that when you do refinance, you need to be careful of your DSCR because it definitely shrinks. Refinancing is return of capital, not return on capital. And you can get in trouble with a refinance when you have obviously a downturn in the market cycle. And if you go with long-term agency debt, so you want to go with maybe more bank debt that's more flexible on the prepayment penalty. So if you can tell the listeners a little bit more about where they can find out more about you.
I can be found at achieveinvestmentgroup.com, ACHIEVE, like achieving a goal, achieveinvestmentgroup.com. My email is james@achieveinvestmentgroup.com. I have a Facebook group, Multifamily Investors Group. You guys can search for that. I have a website. My website is achieveinvestmentgroup.com, right? You can find me in LinkedIn, Facebook, and I have my own podcast. It's called Achieve Wealth, a True Value Add Realistic Investing Podcast. Achieve Wealth, True Value Add.
All right. To all of our listeners, thanks for listening in. And if you like this episode, please head over to iTunes or Stitcher and like, subscribe, and review this podcast as it'll help us grow and reach more of an audience. And we'll talk to everyone next week. Thanks, everyone. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. If you're interested in learning more about APT Capital Group and speaking to someone on our team, click on the link and schedule a call with us. We're here to help, and we'd be excited to speak with you and get to know more about you and your goals. Talk to you soon.